We are actually starting on a, earlier than normal, even though we're 5 minutes late. So we have a pretty full agenda today, and thank you for all being here and those of us joining it online. We will not be taking action on any bills today, too, just so you're aware. I've previously heard, but we're going to probably do something here fairly quick. So before we start, though, with our hearing, let's go to, you received the minutes for March 12th. Any questions on those minutes? Seeing none, we'll accept a motion to approve. First moved by Ross, seconded by Mosier. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes are passed. Now we will open up the hearing on House Resolution, Concurrent Resolution 5026, the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act. And so joining us, Cale Drumright from the Revisor's Office. So welcome to committee. Normally we don't have a first timer come this late in the year, so but no, thanks for your work on this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Chairman, members of the committee, House Concurrent Resolution 5026 states that the legislature supports the Federal AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act. It's green. There we go. 5026 states that the legislature supports the Federal AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act and recognizes the importance of maintaining access to AM radio in vehicles nationwide. The Federal AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act, Senate Bill 1669, if enacted, would require the Department of Transportation to issue a rule that requires vehicles manufactured, imported, or shipped in the United States to have devices that can access AM broadcast stations. HCR 5026 further resolves that the legislature emphasizes the critical role of AM radio in serving the informational needs of rural communities, supporting the agriculture industry, and enhancing emergency preparedness. HCR 5026 urges the federal government to ensure continued accessibility to AM radio and vehicles through the passage of the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act and policies that maintain its crucial role. If you do have any further questions, please direct them to Kyle.
All right. Kyle or Cale? To Kyle, okay. All right.
I'm afraid I'm not in here. That's my rule.
Okay, well, thank you, Cale. Are you gonna start doing that now? Do you, do your walk off as soon as you? Okay, that's it. At least didn't drop the mic. So, all right. We will go with our first in-person proponent, Allison Mazie, the president of the Kansas Association of Broadcasters. Allison, I know it's interesting for the KB to be in front of the Agriculture Committee, but thanks for being here.
Sometimes we're in education. You never know where you're going to end up. But good afternoon, Chairman Rogers and members of the committee. Again, I'm Allison Mazie. I'm president of the Kansas Association of Broadcasters. And in this role, I represent the 293 full-power TV and radio stations across the state of Kansas. I'm here today to ask the legislature to support AM radio by passing Concurrent Resolution 5026, which essentially endorses the Federal AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act. In 2023, the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act was introduced in the U.S. Senate, and this bipartisan legislation would require the Transportation Secretary to ensure a rule requiring vehicles manufactured in or imported into the U.S. have devices installed that provide access to AM radio. This legislation comes as a response to automakers removing AM radio from many of their electric vehicles and signaling that they may remove AM radio from new models and internal combustion engines as well. In fact, last year, Ford announced that they had planned to remove AM radio from their standard internal combustion models. Automakers removing free over-the-air radio, I believe, is an effort to monetize the dashboard. And I believe unless the federal government steps in the near future, the dashboard will be fully subscription-based. Removing AM radio from cars, this is going in and out, I think, is not only bad for the broadcasting industry, it jeopardizes the national emergency alert system infrastructure. AM radio is the backbone of EAS. When internet and cell phone towers go down, AM radio remains. Nothing extends further or is more reliable than AM radio. Leaders of FEMA and countless other organizations have called on the auto industry not to remove AM radio and support this federal bill. AM radio is not only critical to EAS, but it is vital to agricultural communities, providing weather updates, crop reports, and other information to farmers and ranchers. Currently, the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act has 226 co-sponsors in the U.S. House and 48 in the Senate. Our hope is that by passing Resolution 5026, that the state of Kansas encourages our federal lawmakers to pass this vital legislation and provides a strong showing of support for Kansas broadcasters and the critical role of AM radio. Thank you, and I'm happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thanks, Allison. Any questions? Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the fear basically that if this federal law doesn't pass, that every single vehicle manufacturer is going to choose to not have AM radios in their vehicles?
We believe that it would trend that way. That, you know, if an auto manufacturer like Ford is saying that they're going to remove it from internal combustion models, I can't imagine that they would backtrack on that as time goes on.
But at this point, there's still a large number of manufacturers that haven't said that they're going to do away with AM radio, right? It's just been a small number at this point.
It's been several models. I couldn't even name all of them. Volkswagen doesn't have it in some of theirs. Tesla, Ford. So it's not an inconsequential number.
All right. Other questions? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are these companies still including FM radio?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Other questions? Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess you would be the person that would be most familiar with broadcasting rules and laws, so I'm going to ask you. I remember when last summer, I guess, I had a call from someone in my community that was just so upset about this because they really didn't have access to anything else in their home but AM radio. And there are people in poverty that just don't have anything else. They have that. And then you take it out of the car. And I remember being in a tornado one day and really desperately needing my radio and not knowing where I was and not knowing what station to tune into. I was frantically looking for a station. So I understand the value. Now, what was my question? My question was, what are the rules about FM radio versus AM radio and what kind of service they need to provide to the public?
Well, so AM radio specifically is what the National Emergency Alert System utilizes because those AM signals can extend much, much further than FM. It can go through mountains, through buildings. So that's why the utilization of AM is preferred over FM for EAS.
It's the distance that they can reach.
Yes.
Coverage area. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your report. And it's not an absence of tower or signal issue. It's just an issue of manufacturers choosing not to do it because they believe the market's not out there, I assume, for
Correct.
listeners.
Yes, they said that it was removed after, focus group feedback, but I think the majority of Americans, especially those in rural communities, those who living in, traveling, I think they didn't consider the unintended consequences of removing of the EAS component and how you can't have EAS without AM radio. And that's why I think it's essential to point out that former directors of FEMA support this legislation.
A follow-up, I'm assuming, they've done this for years, multiple AM, FM. I'm assuming the cost probably isn't prohibitive for AM to make a radio that's AM and FM.
Oh, no. It's dollars to include the necessary components in these vehicles to have AM radio.
Thank you for that.
Other questions? Seeing none. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And the chairman's going to do his prerogative and stay here instead of go up there and get hammered by you all for questions. I have brought this resolution. We thank many of you in this room that have signed on as co-sponsors to this. If you don't know, this is kind of what I do for a living. I started my broadcasting career in AM at the age of 15 in Phillipsburg. If you all heard, we saluted our state broadcasters here a few weeks ago. And just a few weeks ago in January, when the storm came, the one station that stayed on the air of our cluster in Garden City was our AM radio station. People know that AM radio is where you can turn into even here in Topeka. One that still has a great audience early in the morning is WIBW. And probably had a little larger audience back in 1999 when no, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry, no. But it may have. But, you know, and one of the reasons why it's in this committee because of agriculture and much like the representative from Manhattan said, you know, bad weather or just information, where do you turn to? You turn to the radio and knowing what's going on. There's still vehicles out on the road. That's what they have is an AM radio. Yes, many folks have their phone, but this is also one that AM radio still plays a critical role. And you will find if you looked at the ratings of many of our larger communities as well as the rural areas, that AM radio does carry its own weight. It does have an audience. Now, I know that maybe my kids and my grandkids, as they grow up, they may not be as strong and listen to Grandpa on the radio or Dad, but I know a lot of other folks do. And so this is what this resolution basically does, is send notice to our delegation to hopefully support the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act. And that's what that does. It doesn't, I don't think we're infringing on the federal government and demanding anything. We've had a few of those doing different things this year. All this does is what many other states have done. Many other state legislators have said the same thing, the important role that AM radio plays. And I think here in Kansas, as you all recognized, our local broadcasters in radio, television, you know, AM and FM radio and so on, and the critical role they play. And last year we went to bat for many of them. You all supported as we tried to make sure that your local broadcast entity could carry the ball games once they got through the regular season, and that's going to be an ongoing situation, not necessarily to confuse things with this. Quickly, to just do a quick difference on AM and FM. AM is amplitude modulation, and so what that does is that signal does bounce around. It goes all over. If you had a 50,000 watt radio station, which is the largest power wattage an AM station can go, you could cover half the U.S. primarily at night, because at night with the radiant temperatures and so on, it goes a long way. So you could hear a Denver station, you could hear you hear Louisville, Kentucky out here, WHAS, and many of us grew up with a station down south called KOMA. That was our first station for rock and roll. So WCCO out of Minneapolis, KSTP, and so on. Those are all AM call letters. FM is frequency modulation, and primarily it depends on what the wattage is. The biggest you could have, power-wise, 100,000 watts. Typically, that goes about a 60-mile radius, but it does not bounce around. It is directional. And so while those are well, they complement each other. And to continue to boost AM radio too, in some locales, they have what they call translators, which are small, kind of cover the city grade or cover the city. So we have even the AM stations here in Topeka. If you listen to the talk station, one of the talk stations in Topeka, they have a translator, so it's FM, and it gets just kind of over town. So you still have the same information, but one of the stations here has a lot of wattage. You get about to the ranch, you know, west of town about 15 miles, and that's about all you can hear on the FM signal. So it does still play a vital role, whether it be ball games or information or entertainment. So with that, I ask for your support of this resolution in just a few moments as well when it's on the floor here in the coming days. So any questions? Representative Roth.
I'll just say that when I'm out in western Kansas, northwest Colby, Goodland, and then places south, the FM radio stations are not there, so we have to listen to the ball games and the weather and the news on the AM stations. And it's just like if you listen to FM stations in Topeka here, and let's say you're going to Holton to buy stuff that you don't need, but by the time you get about halfway north, about 10 miles north, you lose the FM station, but then you could pick up the big talker on the AM. And so it's not a falsehood saying that how important AM stations are to inclement weather conditions, getting the news where you can't get FM stations. And so I'm in full support of this resolution.
Representative Schling and Siepen.
I just got to wax sentimental here for a minute. When I was a kid back in the late 60s, I had a little Bakelite AM radio that was a Zenith, and it had a little glow-in-the-dark lightning bolt, and it was only AM. There was no FM on it. I found it in the garbage can in the alley, and it worked. And I would take it into my bed at night and hide under the covers because my parents wouldn't let me stay up late at night, right? And I would listen to all the music my parents didn't listen to on KEWI 1440 or KTOP, or, during the day, Kelly Lenz's Farm Report and WIBW and all that different stuff. E.G. Marshall's Mystery Theater, that was one to stay up for. It was fantastic. I just, out of sheer AM patriotism, I have to support this bill.
Very good. Anything else? Seeing none, we have anybody else want to testify in person? Seeing none, we have written only proponent, Claudia Hissong, with behalf of Kansas Farm Bureau members. Anyone wishing to testify opposed to HCR 5026? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on House Concurrent Resolution 5026. And due to the timing of our committee and the timing of where we are in the legislature, I will call on Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we suspend the rules of the committee and work HCR 5026.
Second by Roth. Any discussion? Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm fine with going ahead and working the resolution, but I'll probably be the only one opposed to it. And I mean, I'm obviously not against AM radio, but I'm just not a big fan of federal mandates. And this is a federal law mandating AM radios in every single vehicle. And I don't think it's a big enough problem at this point to pass that federal law when it's not every single vehicle manufacturer that's doing this, when it's just a few that have said that they're going to do this. And I basically heard or been told that a lot of them are already starting to back off anyway, just because of all the public pressure on them. And so I certainly support AM radio. I'm just not a big fan of government mandates.
All right, other discussion? Representative Featherston?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might be the only person siding with my friend from St. John. My husband's vehicle does not have an AM radio, and I hate it because there's no K-State or Royals, and that is a real problem for me. But I'm not sure my personal axe to grind belongs here, and I just wonder if the free market can take care of this problem. Also, do we know what the penalty is if they don't?
I guess they go buy a new car. No, I don't know.
No, like what happens to the manufacturers if they don't put the AM?
No, I don't know all
Okay,
this because
just curious.
that's a federal law. By the I don't know.
We're just asking them not to do it.
Yeah. What we're trying to do is just say support this bill. Okay, just a second. We need to. We've kind of got off on. We need to pass emergency final action first, then we'll discuss. Okay, so all those in favor of emergency final action, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Back on working the bill, Representative Seibert.
I was just going to say, it's an opposition. I'm for this because we spend billions of dollars putting things on the market like network and interface, and we said free market system work. I pay for it all across the board, but I think it is important in rural areas to have the AM. And if you don't want to listen to it, there's a dial on your phone. Turn it on.
Okay. Any other discussion on the bill? Seeing none, Representative Mosher, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close.
All those in favor signify by, or a second on that? Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. That was just the EFA.
Yeah, I thought, well, we still have to pass that, don't we?
I'm sorry. That was emergency final action.
We still have to vote on
So what's the will of the committee? Representative Seibert.
I move that we pass this resolution out favorable for passage.
Second. Second by Schlingensieben. He got in the minutes this year. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We pass HCR 5026 favorably. I don't know if I've ever done many EFAs in one committee before, but thank you for your indulgence on that. Okay, now let's go on to our informational hearing on right to repair. This is something that's been in the works for a little while, but is the way timing works, the best laid plans sometimes you don't make till you kind of run into it. So there is no bill. There is more of concept, but you know, as we wanted to have the opportunity for the committee to hear from those that were successful and also those that has affected their livelihoods from a regional but primarily a local standpoint, statewide. But so that's what this is, and so we will have those in favor and in opposition of right to repair, and so we do have a pretty good list. So we'll kind of ask to go 5, 7, 10 minutes at the most, probably not even that much, and then questions and answers from the committee. So with that, we're going to first start off with Tyler Garrett. Is Tyler with us? Okay. He's the Director of Government Relations for the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, and Colorado last year. Yes, Colorado passed a right to repair. So Tyler, if you're there, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. My name is Tyler Garrett, and I'm the Director of Government Relations for Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. We are a general farm organization that represents family farmers and ranchers through our grassroots policy process in Colorado, New Mexico, and Wyoming. I have been invited here today as one of the main advocates for Colorado's right to repair legislation that was signed into law last year. I do have other things available if you would like to talk about them, but I would like to talk about first the principle of right to repair and why is it important to family farmers and ranchers, and then talk about the Colorado law. I do also have some information on how the process went during our bill process, as well as some myths that were present around right to repair. At its essence, right to repair fundamentally deals with two things: competition and freedom of choice. As tractors and other farming equipment become more and more technologically advanced to make the jobs of farmers and ranchers a little easier, one aspect of this advancement has made the lives of many farmers and ranchers quite a bit more difficult, which is repairing that equipment when it breaks. Due to the undue hardship and mental strain that this has on farmers and ranchers, Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, Kansas Farmers Union, and our many partners support legislation on right to repair. Right to repair legislation, simply put, would give farmers and ranchers the freedom to either repair their own equipment or to make their equipment or to take their equipment to a mechanic of their choice to be repaired, including authorized equipment dealers and independent repair providers. Our president, Chad Franke, stated that designing parts to have unique software instructions serves no real purpose other than forcing your customers to come back to an authorized dealer for repairs. Because of this, many farmers are actually electing to purchase older equipment to avoid the headache of these requirements. And authorized dealers can sometimes be hours away from the farms and ranches that rely on this equipment. That's why our president continued by stating that right to repair would ensure that local mechanics would get access to the tools and information that they need to complete repairs, giving farmers multiple options. In a nutshell, it is this freedom of choice that led Farmers Union to support right to repair legislation, and we have been tireless advocates of this for years. I will skip a little bit there. I did submit the testimony. I do want to talk about right to repair legislation that became law earlier this year in Colorado. On April 11th, 2023, the Colorado General Assembly voted on final passage of HB 23-1011, Consumer Right to Repair Agricultural Equipment. This bill was signed into law on April 25th, 2023, and went into effect on January 1st, 2024, making Colorado the first state in the country to have agricultural right to repair legislation. Let me skip ahead in my testimony here a little bit so I can make sure we get the right things for you. I want to say that the crux of the law is in this paragraph that comes from the bill itself. For the purpose of, quote, for the purpose of providing services for equipment in the state, an original equipment manufacturer shall, with fair and reasonable terms and costs, make available to an independent repair provider or owner of the manufacturer's equipment any documentation, parts, embedded software for agricultural equipment, firmware, or tools, or with the owner authorization data that are intended for the use with the equipment or any part, including updates to the above mentioned items. Original equipment manufacturers and equipment dealers that do not comply with the law by not providing farmers and ranchers or independent repair providers with the tools and equipment necessary required under the law could be found in violation of an unfair or deceptive trade practice. I will say that, as we worked through the legislation in Colorado, we did make sure to address some of the concerns that were brought forward by the original equipment manufacturers, equipment dealers, and others. And so I want to mention a few of those now. We knew that this process was not going to be easy, and that going through the process, we knew that we needed to ensure that we addressed the myths that were prevalent with right to repair discussions, and that we needed to demonstrate that there was an actual issue, which there was if you listen to the farmers and ranchers that testified in Colorado. We did sit down and negotiate with the original equipment manufacturers and equipment dealers, which even included delaying a floor vote on the bill to address some of the concerns that were raised by these organizations later in the process. Other than the fundamental issues of whether or not farmers and ranchers should have the right to repair their own equipment, we were able to compromise on almost every issue that was raised. And we addressed concerns the original equipment manufacturers and equipment dealers would have, that they did have on divulging trade secrets. So we included specific language that require that the legislation states that it does not require manufacturers to divulge trade secrets. You have a few things, but I'll skip to the end here and just know that I do have a list of myths that we can talk through if you'd like, such as evading emission standards, that all farmers want to do is illegally increase their horsepower, or that the MOU between the American Farm Bureau Federation and some of the equipment dealers is a good fix, enough of a fix. But I will wrap up by saying that there are these few things. The process is not going to be easy. There will be a lot of misinformation. There will be confusion about what right to repair is. We all must be willing to compromise, but not on what is important. And at the end of the day, we need to listen to our farmers and ranchers. I hope that you will consider bringing forward agricultural right to repair legislation to provide family farmers and ranchers in Kansas the ability to choose how they fix their equipment, either fixing it themselves, bringing it to an independent repair provider, or bringing it to the manufacturer's authorized repair provider. This is common sense legislation that provides agricultural producers the ability to get their equipment fixed in a timely manner so that they can continue to provide the food, fiber, and fuel to the people of Kansas, the United States, and abroad. Thank you for your time and for listening to me speak about this important issue for family farmers and ranchers. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, Tyler, thank you. Questions, Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your report. Can you enlighten me if I bought a new tractor in Colorado and under their bill and it had a warranty on it, does that right to repair cover home repairs or something, even though there's a warranty? And sometimes I'm thinking of time, maybe a month before I can get it into the dealer and I may be able to do it. So could you answer that?
So that is a good question and was something that we talked about a lot. That, again, is up to the equipment manufacturer, and there is a possibility that you may void your warranty depending on the warranty itself. Now, what we talked through also was that this is a decision that should be made by the person who owns the equipment. We do also believe that you should not void your warranty just because you're making a repair, and depending on what it is. And, you know, farmers and ranchers have the ability to still take it to the original equipment manufacturer if an authorized dealer, if that's what they so choose. But if they are replacing a sensor and need to then reset the operating system, we hope that that would not void a warranty by simply replacing a small part and resetting the system.
Thank you for that clarification.
Other questions? Representative Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Reading ahead a little bit to kind of the opposition testimony, they're saying that right to repair legislation exposes operating software to security risks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, you know, there's some information between the embedded software and the source code. Right to repair does not provide information on source code, which is the underlying code that tells something how it works. The operating embedded software is more of your operating system. And so if you think about this in terms of vehicles, you know, you can take your car to any manufacturer or to any mechanic that you wish if you want to take it to someone in your hometown instead of taking it down the road to the equipment manufacturer. It's the same principle. It does not expose you know, more risk to the equipment in terms of I just lost my words. I do apologize. But if you think about it in the same way with the cars, if you take your vehicle somewhere to get fixed, that does not mean it's more at risk to be open to, you know, hackers or things along those lines, if that's what you're getting at.
Okay. Other questions? Tell me about the process a little bit. I mean, I'm looking at the bill, and it looks like it was a right to repair wheelchairs, and then it was kind of taken over by agriculture. Maybe step through the process of kind of how it got introduced and how kind of it became an agriculture bill.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the year prior, so in 2021, the sponsor did bring right to repair for powered wheelchairs. And so making sure that those that have power wheelchairs are able to actually fix their equipment, because some people have been down for months at a time, and knew that this was something that they wanted on work on as the next step. And so they were taking it one step at a time and knew that agricultural equipment was something that was really important to make sure that we get fixed in time so that we can ensure that you know, your crops are harvested in time. So you know, after listening to stories of farmers and ranchers, like one of our board members, Danny Wood, up in northeast Colorado, where his equipment was down, broke during harvest. When he called the manufacturer, when he called the dealer and said, "Hey, I have this issue," and he's a former diesel mechanic, he said, "Can you please come up and fix this? I know what it is. It is this X, Y, and Z issue." And they said, "It'll be about a week when we can get up there." They got up there in about a week. He said, "Did you bring that?" He said, "Yep, this is what it is." And then they said, "Did you bring the part?" And he said, "Nope, we have to go back and order it." And it took him about 2 more weeks. So his tractor was down about 3 weeks during harvest. And especially in northeast Colorado, there's a lot of hail. And so after hearing these stories from farmers and ranchers, the sponsor decided that agricultural equipment really needed to be addressed, that there was an issue. And so the bill sponsor in the House, it was bipartisan sponsorship in the House. The Republican sponsor was as a computer scientist and knew that that this would be just fine. And so as we moved through the House, it went, you know, pretty well. And when we got to the Senate, we had a lot more conversation. The representatives from some of the equipment manufacturers and dealers decided that at that point, because I'm not sure if they knew or thought it would make it to the Senate, they decided that they would like to chat with us more about some of these issues, some of their major concerns. And so we did delay after the hearing before we're going to the floor. We asked the sponsors to delay so that we could work with them. And we had multiple meetings where we sat down, walked through the bill, what the major concerns were, particularly around security, trade secrets, things along those lines, and made sure to address those in the bill. And as I said, we did address all of their concerns that they brought forward, other than the fundamental issue of should farmers and ranchers have the right to repair, which we believe that farmers and ranchers should have the right to repair. If you're buying equipment, you should have the right to do with it as you need to make sure that your operation stays in operation.
All right, very good. Representative Seibert?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry I was late for committee. I was being interviewed by the FBI.
Oh.
Anyway, I appreciate what you do for this. We've been working on this for a number of years, clear back, I can't remember, 6-8 years ago. I was on NCSL committee, and we was in California working on this right to repair. Also worked for a major green dealer. But one of the things I'm supportive of this right to repair is so many of these things could be fixed with the proper technicians and stuff. And I could see if it was changing programming and stuff, but even one of the incidences I seen was a big green company came out and changed their GPS signal, so all your GPSs on all the equipment you had was no longer workable. It was going to cost $5,000 for a new receiver, but you could rent a hockey puck from them to plug in between the receiver and the old one, and it worked. So the question was everybody was complaining about was if you could get this puck for $350, why couldn't you get the upgrade for the receiver for $5,000? But it was a right to repair, so you couldn't go in and see. And I can understand changing any of the digital equipment in it or any of the digital programming in it because that's priority information. But to repair something that doesn't work, and now you've got a high dollar piece of equipment that's worth a couple $100,000 and it's worthless. So I support this, and I think it needs to be a debate, but it's been going on for a number of years. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing none right now. Tyler, thanks again for joining us and giving it the insights on how the process, and we have your contact information if other committee members want to talk to you maybe offline on other situations of how that situation works. So again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to talk to anyone.
Okay, thank you so much. Up next, let's bring up Don Teske, the president of the Kansas Farmers Union. And your thoughts? So, welcome to committee.
Thank you, sir. I'll keep my thoughts brief. Thank you, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Minority Carlin, and I got to give a shout out to Vice Chair Mosier because she's my neighbor, and we've done a pot full of ball games together over the years because our boys were playing sports together, and they made a hell of a good quarterback, running back combination. So good times. So back to this. You got stuck with me. Nick was going to do the testimony. Then you changed the days. And so it's your fault. So you got to put up with me and my rambling. But where Kansas Farmers Union is a proponent of right to repair. And in our policy, it says we support fair repair and right to repair legislation that would allow farmers and independent mechanics access to diagnostic software, information, and other tools to repair modern equipment. And not only is that in Kansas Farmers Union state policy, that is also in National Farmers Union policy and was just aggressively reaffirmed last week at our national convention. So that is very much a farmers union position. And Nick did a heck of a good job of putting this testimony together. I hope you read it. I mean, he even did notations. I've never done notations on my testimony, so it's pretty good. And basically all I'm going to say is it's just common sense. You bought the machine. You should have the right to do what you want with it. And if I would have had to take all my vehicles to the dealer to get fixed over the years, I'd be broke. And my mechanic in town is my godson, and he keeps things running good, and he charges a fair price, and I'm helping feed his kids, and he's part of the fire department in the local community. I mean, that's what we do in rural areas. And so, why would we have to take our tractor our combine 100 miles away to get fixed. And you've already heard some of the complaints about backup time and et cetera. So this isn't nothing new with John Deere. I'm a green guy. Almost every piece of equipment on my farm is John Deere green. It's old shit, but it's John Deere green. I don't have to worry about right to repair, but even back when I'd overhaul our two-cylinder tractors, our Johnny Pops in the 1950s and 60s there, you had to have special tools from John Deere to tear an engine down. And, you know, some of the tools I'd make myself, and more complicated tools, thankfully I had a cousin that was a John Deere mechanic, and so you go borrow stuff on a Sunday and that kind of thing. But John Deere has never played nice about being able to work with others. And I'm not complaining about John Deere. I'd do the same thing if I was in their position. But I think we all should stand the right to decide for ourselves how to fix the equipment we buy. Questions?
Questions for President Teske?
That's
All right,
pretty
Don,
easy.
thanks. You were riveting, so appreciate it. You got us all ready to go, so thank you so much. Okay, and so we also wanted to invite some of the area dealers to come in as well and express, since we do not have a bill, we don't have that in the books, but how this could possibly affect them, their business, their community, and also some of their clients. So first, or customers, let's go to Craig Murray, the Director of Aftermarket with Heritage Tractor. And just before you start, Craig, I just want to let those on the line as well know, we will do Brendan Meinhardt next. He's here in person. Then Eric Wareham from NADA, and then Jerry Ostrander from Prairie Land Partners. So that's the order we'll go in those in favor of speaking in the affirmative of right to repair. So, Craig, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the committee. I thank you for allowing me to speak today. I very much appreciate it. My name is Craig Murray, as the chairman mentioned. I work for Heritage Tractor. We're a 21-store John Deere dealer, farm equipment dealer based in Baldwin City, Kansas. We employ almost 600 people, and I'm here today to talk about why Heritage Tractor supports customers' right to repair and opposes right to repair legislation. Heritage Tractor supports customers' right to repair. First of all, there's no restrictions for any customer, including independent repair shops, to purchase any part or any tool from Heritage Tractor. We want to earn as much business as we can from customers as possible. 2 of every 3 parts that we sell, representing hundreds of thousands of transactions, are hundreds of thousands of individual transactions are to customers who make the repairs themselves. Over the last 5 years, we've increased our parts inventory by 50%, a multi-million-dollar investment that provides Kansas customers access to one of the largest parts inventories in the USA. That helps Kansas customers make repairs faster. Just like our colleagues at AGCO, Kloss, Case IH, Kubota, New Holland, Heritage Tractor fully supports the Memorandum of Understanding between John Deere and the American Farm Bureau and its 6 million members, including 30,000 farm members, farm families in Kansas. This is the alternative to legislation, and it's a reasonable way forward. The MOUs, I sent this to the chairman's office. You should all have access to it, the MOU between Farm Bureau and John Deere. So you've got that. You should and can access that as you wish. The MOUs agreed to by the American Farm Bureau and heavy equipment manufacturers have built-in mechanisms to assess issues, make amendments to keep up with model and technology changes. Equipment owners have access to a repair issue grievance process through the American Farm Bureau website. This portal provides an avenue to address issues in a timely and constructive manner, and this process is available to owners that are not American Farm Bureau members. Heritage Tractor opposes right to repair legislation. Right to repair legislation trends that we have seen in recent years are concerning. Our dealership is independently owned, operated by native Kansans, offer Often, right to repair legislation lacks clear language about whether the obligation to make parts, tools, documentation available to customers or independent repair providers falls, and it gets vague, and there's questions about whether those obligations fall to the equipment manufacturer or the dealer. So, for example, you know, if the legislation or the bill says that parts need to be provided at cost to an independent repair shop, for example, is that cost is the dealer obligated to do that, or is it the manufacturer? If it's the dealer, that has major impacts and implications on our business model. That's one example. Authorized equipment dealerships like ours are a significant source of jobs in the area where they operate, often in rural communities. We employ sales and marketing teams, precision ag engineers, certified training instructors, human resource professionals, highly skilled IT and parts professionals, and technicians. We make significant investments in training of this critical workforce, the latest products and innovations and solutions offered by original equipment manufacturers like John Deere. We also make significant investments to design, build, and maintain state-of-the-art facilities to stay competitive and better serve customers. Right to repair legislation too often ignores the major economic impact these businesses have on their communities and the potential threat that unreasonable and, we believe, unnecessary demands of right to repair activists pose to authorized dealer operations. Many versions of this legislation, which have been generically called right to repair, have common language which seeks to legalize the unlocking, adaptation, modification of any part of a product, inclusive of its software, which controls important safety and data protection features. This approach creates privacy, safety, data security risks, which are well beyond the information necessary to ensure that equipment can be repaired. Safety features. In the equipment we sell, many safety features and systems are controlled and monitored through software. For example, some of these systems contain sophisticated embedded software. There's a rapidly expanding field of functional safety standards governing the structure and the development process around this embedded software, which is complex to implement even for experts in the field. Tampering or otherwise altering these systems by anyone other than experts who develop these systems could be problematic for the safety of the equipment user and those around them. Some examples of control systems include auto-leveling, anti-spillback features in bucket loaders, vehicle speed controls. That's a big deal. And there's an emerging technology, autonomous vehicles, autonomous tractors will be hitting the marketplace soon, and driving system for agricultural tractors. So that software, there's issues around that as well, and the potential modification of that software. Modification of embedded firmware in any of these applications could create dangerous situations. Data protection. Equipment customers under any right to repair legislation should retain complete control of the data generated by their machines, which can only be shared with trusted partners at their discretion. Emissions tampering. Many proponents of right to repair legislation suggest that property ownership entitles them to right to modify. The Clean Air Act prohibits tampering with emissions controls, as well as manufacturing, selling, and installing aftermarket devices intended to defeat those controls. Illegally modified vehicles and engines contribute to pollution, harms public health, impedes efforts by the EPA, tribes, states, local agencies to plan for and attain air quality standards. With all the repair information available to customers and significant concerns outlined in this testimony, we respectfully request that the non-road amendment below that I've included in my written testimony that you have be included in any legislation put forward by the committee for consideration. Of note, several states have enacted digital right to repair laws over the past few years. Those states include California, New York, and Minnesota. In 2024, it is anticipated that Oregon and Maine will also enact digital right to repair laws, which exempt the non-road industry. Colorado's right to repair legislation is, we're being told, not being enforced, and it's already being amended to exclude heavy equipment. If the Kansas House is to address and pursue language which aligns to approaches taken in California, New York, and Minnesota, we would be neutral on that point. Thank you for your time today, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
All right, Craig, thanks. Any questions? Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Couple of questions. Sounds like Heritage dealership is doing a good job. Would you have done such a good job if corporate John Deere had been opposed to this and the voluntary agreement with Farm Bureau had not been signed?
You know,
in other words, you're between a rock and a hard place with the manufacturer. And if they said no, you would have to say no, correct?
That's not 100% true. I mean, we're an independent dealer. We have a John Deere contract, and we don't agree on everything with John Deere. We don't do everything they ask us to do. What I would say to your question is, really, customers decide. You know, customers are the ones that decide whether or not Heritage Tractor is doing a good job and whether or not we earn their business. And we don't mind competing with independent repair shops. So you know, what our mission is and what our focus is to do right by our customers. And when we do right by our customers, we earn the right to keep going. And that's really what it's about. And if, you know, we love being a John Deere dealer. John Deere runs a great business, but it's their business. We, Heritage Tractor, have to run our business. And by that, I mean, you know, we've got to earn it with customers every day. I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does in part. We're dealt the same set of cards. We are obviously for the people, but sometimes regulations, state regulations, federal regulations, the loss of if we vote something in and it jeopardizes multi-million dollars of federal funds that an organization can't get. And so I appreciate what you're doing, and I, you know, definitely support the right to repair. But, you know, at the same token, I think sometimes we get the impression that corporate at that level, I know in my home area, John Deere forced a local dealer out simply because they required him to have 3 dealerships and he only had 2. So there is some leverage there for you carrying the green product. And so, like I said, I'm just curious to see if that agreement with Farm Bureau hadn't been signed, if John Deere would have been as supportive.
Let me try it this way. Customer Service Advisor is an important electronic diagnostic tool that John Deere has had on the market for 10 years. Right to repair legislation, you know, as it relates to the agricultural industry and in the context of what we're talking about it today, has been around for, you know, maybe 5 years. I mean, it's really gotten a lot of attention over the last 5 years. My point is that Deere, I think, recognized 10 years ago, and it took some time to develop that product, so even before that, that customers needed to have access, or customers wanted to have access to that type of repair information. So, and we agree with that, and so we support that. So we support the sale of Customer Service Advisor. So, you know, what I would say is, again, I think in Deere's case, I won't speak for Deere, but I will speak for Heritage Tractor. We've got to earn our customers' business, and if they demand access to, you know, repair information that we need to provide to them, we've got to find a way to do it. And so far, that answers Customer Service Advisor in this example.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions? Representative Fairchild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This isn't really a probably a question for him, but he's actually listed as being in favor of the bill, and there's only one person listed as being an opponent, so on the sheet of paper, it doesn't look like that was quite correct.
Well, there's no bill, so this is an informational hearing basically for
the concept
yeah,
or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Question, I think, as you brought up in your testimony, is really the crux, and I guess, and we can ask Mr. Meinhardt this as well. It seems like the crux is kind of the difference between right to repair and right to modify. And it seems like this has become an issue as technology has taken over. I mean, we know that, you could put some of the technology on a full 40/20, but I can work on my 40/20. I know years ago, my 8560 panel went out and I was stuck in the middle of a field.
Mm-hmm.
And 20 years ago, it was like, oh gosh, what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but is that really, is it controlling data? I mean, what's really the crux of this? Why is there seem to be this wide divide in your opinion?
It's a great question. And I think there's two aspects. One of them, I would say, is right to modify. And that issue and proprietary software and trade secrets and all those things. That's I think, one of the issues that is definitely has to be dealt with. Okay, if right to repair bills are going to be passed, that issue has to be dealt with. The second issue is this, I believe. Right to repair, and I think this is why you see states like California, New York, Minnesota, separating right to repair on devices and right to repair on tractors. Imagine a big, beautiful green tractor sitting here against this phone. The right to repair legislation and bills have tried to cover both, and that's always been perplexing to me. And so to see states now separating those two issues and saying right to repair on this device, which I would tend to agree, where am I going to take this thing to get it fixed? It's probably going to take it to an Apple store, probably limited to that for the most part. Although I live in Lawrence and there's a lot of enterprising young college kids that probably could fix it for me, but I'm going to take it to an Apple store probably. That green tractor that I bought, there are many options to take that. I don't believe when someone says they got to travel hours to get to an authorized dealer to make a repair. I just don't think that's true because we sell parts to independent technicians, to independent repair shops, and every day. And we know who they are, we know where they are, and there's a lot of them. Customers have access, a lot of access. We don't restrict repairs, and the only repairs that do get restricted, a tiny percentage of our overall repairs, and those are with the embedded software, the proprietary software that Deere requires us to download onto a customer's controller. So to me, it's two issues. It's one, what you talked about, the right to modify that proprietary software, and two, it's right to repair on devices and right to repair on, in this case, agricultural equipment, and they are vastly different issues with very little in common.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you. I want to make sure we get everybody done in a timely manner, so thank you. Up next, Brendan Meinhardt from Can-Equip. Brendan, thanks for joining us. I know you're busy, and thanks for answering the call when I asked you to come. And
thanks for inviting me, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chairman. I don't have a lot of prepared testimony. I'm more here to answer your questions. I'll start off just with a couple prepared remarks. But Brendan Meinhardt from Can-Equip. We are the Case IH and New Holland dealer. We have 7 New Holland dealerships and 7 Case dealerships throughout the state of Kansas. We have about 300 employees. We stretch all the way from Garden City to Ottawa and from Wichita to Marysville. So pretty well cover the state with a lot of the other brands than what John Deere, and John Deere gets drug into this quite a bit. But Case IH and New Holland, we're all together really figuring this out under this memorandum of understanding. I can't say that word very well. But I'll just take you back to just a little bit. My dad started this business 55 years ago. And I'll compare it to your hometown grocery store in a lot of your small towns. And I've always wanted to be in this business. I grew up in Walmego and always just wanted to be a part of this business. The business keeps changing. We'd love to just have one little place in Walmego and service just those 5 or 15 customers right there, but that's just not how life works now. So that's changed. We've grown now. We have over 300 employees. You kind of wake up one day and you realize you're no more a small business, you're more of a medium-sized business. But we support all independent repair shops to work on things, and we support farmers. And we go to endless lengths to help farmers repair their equipment on Saturdays, Sundays, whenever we can, because we know if we can't, they're going to John Deere. You know, and that's just life. That's just competitiveness. And that's what the U.S. is all about, is being able to choose. But if we're told, and I compare it back to those grocery stores in your hometowns, you looked, the big stores come in, big stores, and all of a sudden you notice your small stores are gone. And this legislation, if it's done wrong, is going to do the same thing to your implement dealerships. Now, we employ a lot of people in small towns. Places like Great Bend, Kansas, Dodge City, Harrington, Kansas, Marysville. Great towns. I just got off the state basketball, and the spirit that those towns have, it's just second to none. I just love it. But when you lose your small town grocery store, you lose your implement dealerships, pretty soon the town's gone. And we are, John Deere, us, Kubota, all these places are reinvesting in these small towns. We're to spend $8 million building a facility in Ottawa, Kansas. And we provide for a lot of great jobs there. College educated to tech-oriented jobs. We currently have 31 jobs in our little company open right now that we would hire for in our small towns. And we sell parts and service. I just looked at the financials from the end of the year. We sell 63% of our parts over the counter to independent repair shops or to farmers and ranchers. And we help support them. So more than half of our parts go out, not through our service departments. Over 50% of our labor goes to work on our own equipment, but only 50% of our labor is actually working on other farmers' stuff that they bring in. So mostly we're there for ourselves to repair. Ken, if you bring that tractor in and you trade it in on a new one, we have to repair the things that are wrong with it, so we do those. And that's what we spend a lot of our time doing and working on. A lot of this legislation that's out there really limits a lot of the parts business. And the parts business it's a fundamental change to our business. If you change and do what Colorado does, your implement dealers will go away like your hometown grocery stores did. Because that's our model, and that's how our model has grown up, is that's a lot where our margin is, to be frank with you. And so we need that. But more importantly, you know, we store millions of dollars worth of parts there. So when you break down on a Saturday or a Sunday or on that holiday, which it seems like that's the only time you break down, but that is life, we are there to take care of you. And our parts people come away from their families and go get the parts and let people work on it. Most all of the repairs that are done out here are easy to fix, and they're getting easier. We send a lot of our technicians to a lot of training, and if this legislation's done wrong, we send each one of our technicians to about 4 weeks of training outside our dealerships. So they're learning how to work on these softwares and everything that these are. The computers are all available to anybody. If any one of us want to show up here and call the dealership today and say, hey, I want a computer to reprogram my tractor, it's available. We quote them to them all the time. So it's available for independent repair shops, for individual farmers. And that has helped. I'll be honest with you, that's helped. That's come up from all this right to repair stuff. But it's really helped farmers get access to all that equipment and that software and anything they have. But it's like anything, it changes quick. Right now, most of all this is just going over the internet and updating the tractors while they sit there idle in the evening at their farms. So it's not like it used to be. We don't have to take our laptop out there and hook it up and then do it and then update the software. Now it's just coming over the air. We talked a little bit about, and something that really bugs me because I have had a rash of them, but tractors that have been modified. And I believe that's what a lot of this legislation's about, is people wanting to delete the aftermarket treatment on their tractors. And this gets very in-depth, and it's very hard to explain in a 7 to 10 minute hearing. I can tell you that. I spent last year at RCDC a day just trying to explain this. And I would like to invite each one of you guys out. We have a dealership here in Topeka, right next to Heritage. We'll host you guys, any one of your committee members, anybody here in the legislature, and we'll show you what a deleted tractor looks like, what the software that they can buy is, and just show you what's happening out there. I think that's the best way to really learn this, but I am continuously getting in tractors that have been modified. And a lot of times I have to call them as the owner of the company because my technician, and I don't blame him, doesn't want to call the customer and says, what your independent repair store did, or somebody else, I won't put it on any individual, did is they deleted your aftermarket treatment system, and now you have to pay $30,000 to get your tractor back right so we can resell it. You can't resell it. We are the policeman for the EPA. Him and I. I don't even get paid for it. In fact, I lose customers over it because I got to call them and tell them, hey, your tractor's been modified by somebody, I don't know who, but now we have to fix it. And it's their choice to fix it. Some do, a lot don't. But we can't resell it through our dealership. And really, we have a hard time working on it in our dealerships right now. It's because it's a really hard spot to put it in. But I'd invite you all to come out to the dealerships. I'll yield to any questions and anything like that.
Questions for Mr. Meinhardt, Representative Moser?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Brendan, for your presentation. You know that I have been to the Marysville store and the Wamego store many times to pick up guards and sections and race to the hayfield to help my husband fix the swather. So I appreciate you. And I appreciate John Deere, too.
Yeah, they do. We're all in this together.
Other questions?
We probably have a voting majority of northern Potawatomi County here with the three of us.
Well, that's it. You know, last one to leave town locked up, I think, so no. I guess a question, and also I was going to ask for John Deere just to make sure we don't run out of time. You say all these things are available, but they're available for a price, correct?
They're available to the same price that they sell us.
Okay.
To us.
Okay.
It's expensive, but software is always expensive.
Well, there's some things floating around that, for if you're a big operator, have several tractors, combines, pieces of equipment, there are services you can probably make work as far as from a dollar standpoint, piece that out to where maybe you have greater access or almost a direct line, if you will. Is that available for both red and green machines?
Mm-hmm. And the neat thing, Mr. Chairman, is that all of that's coming over the air. We are in a matter of, Deere's already there, I believe, and most of my manufacturers now, they're all coming with modems. especially your higher end tractors that we're really talking about here, come with, and they just update every night, like your car does.
Well, one of the questions, I guess, then is, through this whole process, are we going to get to a point where a machine 10 years, if it's 10 years old, is obsolete as far as, because I guess it comes back to, you talk about parts and those type of availabilities. Will it be a point where some of those won't, that old 40-20 may not be able to find parts for it? Because those are now 60 years old this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, I would tell you that the competition is the one that keeps us all in check there. Because if I sell you a Kubota tractor and you can't get parts for it and it's only 10 years old, guess who's going to be the winner?
Right. Well, right.
And that's really the competition. It hasn't happened that I know of yet, but I'll just tell you, the world that we live in today, where, our manufacturers aren't making some of these parts now. They're made by some other manufacturer, and that manufacturer might go out of business too. So there's a lot of things happening, but the neat thing in today's world is we're doing a lot of remanufacturing of that kind of stuff. Getting in pretty deep here.
Sure. Well, and I don't want to do that, but, you bring up the good point of the phones. 30 years ago, this was a bag. And now where we are and with equipment and just thinking about, as technology continues to churn, and still in some places, I'm sure in Kansas, the best Wi-Fi is in those tractors, than in the home. So I understand that. Other questions? Brendan, thanks for being here.
And if you guys ever want to come out, we're right beside each other. Just holler and we'll host you. We'll even have dinner.
All right. Sounds great. We may take you up on that. It may be after me next year, but we may just show. We'll give you at least an hour's notice. So no. Joining us now, Eric Wareham from NADA, I believe. Eric, are you still with us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you, members of the committee. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Eric Wareham. I am Vice President of Government Affairs for the North American Equipment Dealers Association. We represent around 4,500 farm, industrial, and outdoor power equipment dealer locations across North America. And we proudly represent 147 dealer locations in the state of Kansas. So to start off, I think, this is an informational hearing, which is great, because sometimes when you have a bill, you get locked into certain ideas and you don't really talk about the concept. So I applaud you guys for taking that step before having legislation. And in that spirit of talking about the concept of it, I think it's important to define what right to repair is, because there's a lot of layers to this onion, as we've already found out from our dealers testifying, that we can peel back. But what I perceive, and when we talk about legislation, when we define right to repair, it's truly access and availability of parts, tools, documentation, and diagnostics. And that is sort of at the heart of it. And when we look at, in terms of access and availability, our industry, I believe, is a leading example of one that supports customer self-repair. I've been, this issue I've testified on almost 300 times now in the last 7 years or so. And I can tell you that, Craig, who talked earlier, was right. They used to have sort of broad-based bills that covered all digital electronic devices. Now they've kind of been separated out. But part of that, I think, has propelled us in a race to the top, not to the bottom for our industry. Compared to others, we're light years ahead of what we make available and accessible to customers for self-repair. And I don't just state that. We actually have quantifiable information to back that up. You heard from Craig that roughly 60% of their parts are sold out the door. We did a third-party survey of our industry to figure out what the reality of the repair landscape looks like. And what we found was, and I sent all of you an infographic for reference, but what we found that is on average, a dealership sells about 60% of parts out the door. and meaning that 60% of parts sold by a dealership are installed by an owner or an independent repair shop. And I often say I'm an attorney, but you don't have to really be one to understand that if the vast majority of parts are being installed and repairs are being performed by someone other than the dealership, that doesn't really constitute a monopoly. It actually demonstrates that this is a highly competitive environment. And not only that, but I do also want to say that the parts that are available out there, not only are from authorized dealers, but there is a very healthy aftermarket industry as well that supplies parts, tools, documentation, and diagnostics. So clearly, people have the ability to perform repairs themselves. But we faced a lot of legislation, and I think that legislators wanted to see a formalized commitment, and that really culminated in the memorandums of understanding between the major stakeholders on this issue. So it's already been mentioned that Deere, Case IH, New Holland, Kubota, Kloss, and AGCO have all reached agreements with the American Farm Bureau Federation, and that covers about 90% of the farm equipment sold in the country. So there are some, foreign built, specialty type of implements that are not covered by that. We'd like to get it to 100%, but quite frankly, most of it is covered. Most of the equipment you'd see in Kansas, certainly. And under that, Craig talked about this, those MOUs are not just a piece of paper, they're a living document. Built into those MOUs is a process to reassess every 6 months between those two stakeholders. Any issues, any updates that are needed, because we're hearing, Brendan talked about all of the model and technology updates that are occurring rapidly. And so, that also makes legislation not a very good vehicle to address this, because we're going to continue to see increases in technology, and we want to be able to keep up with that. So the MOUs are in place to address that. And there is that portal that Craig also mentioned about the ability for people to, file a grievance or state that a complaint that a manufacturer is not living up to the MOU. Those have been in place for about a year now, and I can tell you that there's been 0 complaints. So when we say whether there's an issue out there, when we have these MOUs in place that are very, very defined, when you look at what is made available, and we have 0 complaints to that process, I question whether this is really an issue that needs legislation to address. So also, to give you an idea, states around the country are exempting agricultural equipment from MOUs. Oregon did just pass a bill and had agricultural equipment exempted. Washington State also exempted out agricultural equipment. And in that sense, we do have Colorado. I can tell you and answer some questions if you want about that as well, because I was involved in 7.5 hour long hearings on this right to repair issue in Colorado in person. And with Colorado in place, with all of the problems that it has, it's kind of a Frankenstein bill, to be quite honest. It was amended over 24 times throughout the process, and it's actually still being amended right now. It was just the bill. There's new legislation to go back and amend it again, which is a concern we have. But nonetheless, with that state in place, we're much like the auto industry now. You've heard a lot about the auto industry. They had legislation passed in 2012 in the state of Massachusetts, and then there were quickly MOUs reached, national MOUs. And so because of that, out of the 300 plus bills that I've seen in the last several years, automotive is carved out of every single one of those at the state level. And that's because the MOUs are working. And I would say that in our industry, the MOUs are working as well, and they need to be given time to continue to work. It's a private sector solution that avoids any of those unintended consequences that legislation can often create. And so with that, I want to say that we oppose legislation for 2 primary reasons. The legislation, there's a lot of definition section in it. The operational provisions in the bill are really categorized in two areas. Number one is that template legislation we see typically fixes the price of parts that a dealer can sell at the same price that manufacturers are required or mandated to offer parts to anyone, independent repair shop or owners, at the same price that they sell them to the dealership. Now, what that does is a couple of things. One, it violates the contracts clause, but two is it really turns our dealers' suppliers into their competitors. And then it also prohibits dealers from making a profit. Now, that's a real issue because the average dealer stocks about $1 million in parts inventory per location. And this is the unintended consequence of intervening in free markets, is that if you were to say you can't sell parts at a markup or at what the Colorado bill contains language of fair and reasonable price, whatever that means, you're going to significantly decrease or disincentivize dealers' investment and continued investment in parts inventory. And all that does is it's counterproductive to the purpose of the bill. All it does is force dealers to invest money elsewhere in those operations if they can't make money off parts. And it decreases their fill rates. It decreases the amount of inventory they have on hand for farmers in Kansas. So we typically see those price fixing provisions. That's a big part of what we oppose. That's a hill we die on. It would fundamentally alter the model of our industry and really put dealers in a hurt. The second reason, and the second operational provision that we typically see, is access to security locks and security-related functions, and really no contours or sideboards around that access to enable or disable security locks and security-related functions for the purpose of repair, maintenance, and diagnostics. That's where we have an issue when we're talking about intellectual property and we're talking about access to safety criteria and also emissions criteria. And you heard Brendan talk about this before. We're already confronting the issue of modified equipment. We don't want to allow unfettered or unrestricted access to intellectual property that would just increase and allow more modification that jeopardizes our dealers. And when I say jeopardizes them, I mean liability financially and physically. I have testified on this many, many times. And fortunately, I've heard dealers share testimony about their technicians that have been injured in their shops when they had equipment brought in that had been modified, say, for instance, to a clutch system, and the technician didn't know and was actually ran over by a tractor and maimed for life. So when people say that's a red herring, I can point you to the people that can share stories with you. And then the second is that dealers, Brendan mentioned it, he can't sell those tractors that have been modified. The reason is that the Clean Air Act specifically provides a penalty of $44,000 per piece of equipment that is sold that contains modified emissions. So for us, a lot of reasons to oppose legislation. And for you, I think there's a lot of reasons to not move forward with legislation simply because we have a private sector solution in place and it's working. And I think it should be given time to work.
All right. Eric, thank you. In the course of time, I have time for one question. Seeing none, thank you again for joining us. And we've got your contact information as we move forward. I thought it was very enlightening of what you bring. So thanks again for sticking with us.
Thank you.
Jeremy Ostrander, CEO of Prairie Land Partners, and finally hear from a farmer from Jefferson County. Jeremy, you with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Rogers and honorable committee members. I do want to speak from a farmer perspective and also share a few insights. I won't talk in theory. I'm going to talk in a couple real life cases that I've been involved in where tampering or altering some of the code or settings on a machine has caused not only mechanical damage, but loss of life. So as I share that, I think I would start with all things when used properly have good consequences or good outcomes.
But a lot of this, when it's used improperly, can lead to things that none of us want to happen. So as you think about that, we have had, and I won't restate all of this because the other individuals have already stated it. For more than 10 years, we have sold software to independent repair shops, independent farmers to be able to do their own repairs. And we send a lot of that out today. From a parts standpoint, we deliver to a lot of independent repair shops. So while we do compete, we also are working together in many cases. But as I look at some independent repair shops that change the software on equipment, many proponents of the right to repair legislation suggest that property ownership entitles them to the right to modify. And the Clean Air Act prohibits the tampering of emissions controls. It is a weekly challenge for us today because of pirated software out of Europe and or Russia, where people bringing in software to go around our emission systems. And like any red-blooded American, I despise carrying DEF fluid up to the top of the combine during hearings, right? It's created a lot of headaches, but we agreed as red-blooded Americans to allow this to happen, and we have to live with it. So I don't believe that it's up to us to change the laws that we agreed to with the EPA and let happen. So it is becoming a weekly challenge for our dealership to deal with these machines, much like Brendan said, and it causes a real challenge for the resale. But I'm going to get to the real crux of the matter here in a second. So rather than talking about theory, I want to share two real life that we have lived through. There are independent repair shops outside of the state that you're setting in today, but in a very close proximity, I'll just leave it at that, that are modifying transmissions and tractors to increase the speed from 20 to 35% over what the original speed of that transmission was supposed to be set at. So we have software available where a farmer can check a speed sensor, for example. That's available to farmers and independent repair shops today. It is not available to modify it, but they have brought that in from other countries. And many of the proponents of this bill want to make that available widespread. So you could go in and increase a tractor that was meant to go 26 miles per hour. You could increase it to 31. You could even increase it up to as much as 40 miles per hour. And that may all sound well and good if you're just cruising down the road with nothing behind that tractor. When you put a big planter, a big air seeder, whatever behind that machine, and you're trying to stop 100 or 150,000 pounds in some cases, those components were not made to wait at an intersection, or were not made to steer under that kind of a load. So the one that I'll relate most, and I get a little teary-eyed talking about this. We had a customer that was outside of our area, but farms within our area. And he chose to modify the horsepower on that tractor. He had an independent repair shop come in, turn up, add 100 horsepower to his four-wheel drive tractor. It sounded great. He could pull bigger implements. I think he even got a little better fuel mileage because it also went around the clean air system on it. The unfortunate outcome of that was that one of the drive components in the drivetrain failed. And when it did, going down the road, it took out the steering and the brakes. That tractor crossed the center line and killed a man and left another one injured for the rest of his life in a very bad situation. And for me in my early career, I thought, hey, we're just, people are out there turning up the work. They own the tractor. When we owned a 4020 or we owned a 1456 International, Brendan will like me for that one. You could take the little wire off and you could turn the screw up and you could get a little more horsepower out of it. But today, the capabilities go way beyond just a little bit more fuel to it. And so when that tractor crossed the center line and killed a man, it left a woman and her children without a father. And it got really real to me. And some of you in this room may have gone to college with this individual. Brendan and I both went to Kansas State with him. He was no longer with us. And that hit home to me that we're not just talking about something small to the side, that these decisions that are being made have lasting ramifications for many people. So I would just ask that you study and understand what is available, and then understand that what some of the proponents that are trying to drive this, the real drivers behind it. And I do not believe that what may look at the front and the appearance, I believe it's the motives that are driving this, and many of the others have spoken about that. So I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ostrander. Any questions? Time for one if we do have one. Thank you very much. Sure appreciate you sticking with us today. So thank you. We also have written only kind of testimony here from Craig Stevens, who is a private citizen, on his thoughts. It is in your file. Also, we didn't forget about you, Mr. Stafford. Eric Stafford, Vice President of Government Affairs, Kansas Chamber of Commerce. These were kind of listed in favor and in opposition, but really kind of the general observation of right to repair. So, Mr. Stafford, welcome to committee.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Good afternoon. Good evening. I will start. I'll be brief. I have to pick my daughter up from soccer at 5:45, so I'll be done by then. So, about 40 minutes. I need to leave. No, I don't think I can speak any better than the individuals that have spoken before me, especially the gentleman from the actual dealerships, to give you the real life implications of this policy. Why are we engaged in this? We are the state affiliate for the National Association of Manufacturers, so we do have the equipment manufacturers who are members of our organization, and we are well trained as staff to respond when we hear the words right to repair. They are very well trained as members to engage us when they also hear those words. So that is why we are here. You have my written comments. I will point you, if you guys want to Google the economic downsides of right to repair. That is a report from the National Association of Manufacturers that has some really good information in here that summarizes a lot of what has already been said today by the previous speakers. But there's one piece that I'll highlight where it says that John Deere's Chief Technology Officer noted in 2021 that 98% of all possible repairs can already be done by their customers. I think the dealerships did a good job of highlighting the tools and access to diagnostics that are available to customers today. The main piece and protection is of intellectual property and making sure that that is secure. And I'll give a personal experience. I took my previous car, I take my current car to the same place. It is a independent Goodyear dealership where I get my normal maintenance and repair done on my vehicle. When it came time to change my transmission fluid, they said, hey, you need to do that. I said, okay, well, let's go ahead and do it. Since I'm here, I said, well, we can't. There's a seal from Toyota that is on your transmission that we are not allowed to break. And you have to take it to Toyota to get that work done. So we went to Toyota and had the work done. And I respect Toyota's right to protect their equipment and had to do that as a consumer. It wasn't a major inconvenience. I had to schedule an appointment, but I get, again, probably 99% of my work done at this independent dealership that is not, or independent business that is not a Toyota dealership. So you have our written comments. Read through that report. It's 13 pages, but it's not, it's not a terrible read. I read it just briefly yesterday, I believe. So happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Any questions for Mr. Stafford? Saying none, thanks for taking over.
Yep, thank you.
Time, appreciate it. Okay, anything else? Any questions for anybody that's here from what you've heard today that we didn't get answered before? Appreciate it. Appreciate it. For those, yes, Representative Blex.
Well, just a comment, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you scheduling this meeting. I guess when we first hear right to repair, as a kid growing up on the farm, you're infringing upon my right. And so the bristles automatically come up. And obviously, I realize the protection of technology and trade issues that become important. I appreciate you guys bringing that out and enlightening me, because I think it was very helpful, and thank you for that.
All right, anything else? Okay, very good. Again, thanks for the indulgence, staying just a few minutes over. We have had that discussion, and we'll keep those that were here today if something moves forward in the next session. Tomorrow, we will have an update from K-State 105, so bring your questions there. They're ready to kind of give an update also on K-State. Dr. Marshall Stewart will be here as well as Jessica Canad. And so it is Agriculture Day today, National Ag Week, National Ag Day, which is the first day of spring. And I believe this is the last really nice day for a few days. It's supposed to be 70 degrees and it's supposed to be rainy next week when we come back. So tomorrow will be our last meeting as well of the Ag Committee. Don't cry, but anyway, so just anything else to go to the cause? So seeing none, if you have nothing else to do, you can celebrate Ag Day by our friends at Pitt State having chicken Annies. So, all right, we are adjourned. Chicken Annies.